You had said something earlier about ways that when you come in with even if it's a positive agenda, just the fact that there's an agenda, that you're, so to carry on from last session, you were talking about this, or, and they might be like, they might respond with, well, what are you trying to do? And what might be a way that you respond to that inquisition?
Well, it sounds as though that's not helpful today, in which case I'm really sorry, because what's much more important is we deal with what's important for you. If that happens a lot, and it's established, I might say, I'm really puzzled by the fact that every time this is talked about, the next time you're angry at me. Or you tell me, why are you bringing it up? Now, you may not be aware of that, but I've noticed that every time. Now, I don't know if it's you that are feeling things about that, or whether it's triggering another part of you that is telling me, maybe, I don't know, that this is too early to follow this up. Clearly, it's something important, so I just want it. But obviously, nothing is going to happen here that doesn't feel okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so there's like a gentle sort of, let's look at the fact that this is something that continues to happen, but also we don't need to cross that boundary. Yeah.
I think you're raising the other point, which is important. In a way, you could see that the whole process is a gentle nudging.
Yeah.
If you are a child that has got a good enough family around them, then there are things that get you to move on as a baby, to solid foods, to going to school, to finding that you're curious about your playmates, to find as you get older that you get a bit, you've got the luxury of being able to begin to be a bit fed up with your parents as an adolescent. Now, if none of that is there, and the body doesn't grow either, in a sense, even though it might be an adult body, the body feels very like, sometimes it feels like there's no gender at all in the body. But anyhow, the situation is that there's, and I've lost my thread there, which is interesting. And it happens quite a lot. It'll come back to me. If we did the tape, I would remember it.
Yeah.
In a way, by the way, people sometimes say, "Oh, I shouldn't forget these things," and I say, "Well, we have to allow ourselves to dissociate, because that's one way of trying to understand what's going on, and not to fight it, because it'll come back when it is." I still haven't remembered. So, can you remember the question? Can you remember the question?
I was asking. Oh God.
It's contagious. It's contagious.
This kept happening to me yesterday. I was in the middle of telling a story, and then I went, what am I talking about? Was it a continue? Oh, the gentle.
I know. No, it was a gentle nudge, and I was telling you that the gentle nudge has to be there, because it wasn't possible to see these stages as a child, both emotional stages, but physical body growing. Now, that means that if you don't have any nudge and you just listen and respond and feedback what you hear with nothing changing, nothing's going to change. So there has to be a gentle way of being able to say, I don't know what's going on, but I'm beginning to feel I keep hearing the same thing again. And I even found myself yawning, you see. Now you've got to be careful. So in other words, so you're trying to gently show that something's going on that feels as though there may be, and I say there may be a reason for that, but I'm beginning to think there's a block somewhere. Can we look at it together? Okay. So it's not like you're resisting, I'm interpreting what you're doing is because this happened. None of that. But it's saying, and that's when you're using your own countertransference, your own reactions, it's such a useful thing, because you can say, I may be wrong, but I feel like we've gone around this again and again. And I'm trying to wonder if there's something going on that neither you perhaps nor I are aware of, that perhaps inside can help us with. And you might get somewhere coming out with like, well, actually somewhere, either the part themselves or someone else says that protective part, or Jack or whoever says, this is going too far, you're going too fast. or this wasn't supposed to happen. You're not supposed to talk about these things. So you
Okay.
begin to at least identify where the block is. And it's not that you're trying to eradicate it, but just in bringing it up, it's in the room rather than hidden.
Yeah.
And so much of trauma is hidden, and so there's no chance to talk about it. So anything like that, it's not that there's a problem, it's at last there's material, you could say, that is both safe enough to talk, but doesn't have to be avoided either. One of the difficulties is, Rachel, that anything that's taken in is, whether it's physical or emotional, there's no distinction. So if what was taken in was something sexual abusive, it applies to anything taken in from what someone else is saying.
Yeah.
That if there is a sense of, oh, I see what you're meaning, that there's somehow falling into my agenda of being controlled.
Yeah.
So, and that's the difficult thing to negotiate. A lot of it, I mean, it sounds complicated, but it's just by trial and error.
Yeah.
And by experience, and by willingness to say, I've got it wrong again, I'm sorry.
Are there some systems you've worked with where it's like the trauma never got talked about, like it was never time? Like, yeah.
I think sometimes it's not possible to. Then it's about being able to, some people carry on as therapists because there's the means to do it. A lot of the time, it's about getting to a point of being able to acknowledge what's been possible to change. So there may have been quite a lot of changes, that self-harm may have come down. The way of looking after themselves may have come down. The sense of disconnection may be better between the parts, but it's never been possible to talk about the trauma. And that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Rather than have the idea that it's got to follow a certain pattern. So it's both recognizing what's possible for that person, and that person themselves might put too much pressure. Some master therapists may put too much expectation, but being able to accept what's possible. Sometimes it also means someone having time to get on with life, let them experience life a bit more, and then see later on if they're at a place where further therapy, not necessarily with the same person. We learn different things, and we experience different things differently as we get older. So sometimes it's part of that. But certainly that has to happen.
Okay.
Yeah. What can be a really helpful thing, evolution to relating better to the protective parts, and there nearly always are some, not always, but nearly always, is that once there is a dialogue and there is respect for that protective part is there to make sure that things aren't talked about, that outwardly are not allowed to talk about, but can also include that the brain is not in the place to be able to talk about it yet. There is then the ability to talk with that part, if there is this going on, where there's been the same thing that's sort of come up from time to time, and it's been shut off. Is to be able to say to Jack out loud, if Jack isn't there, or to say, I wonder if there's a chance to talk to you, Jack, or let me know. And I'm wondering, I'd really value your views about this. Jack, do you think that this is an area that's just going to stay a no-go? And that somewhere, because you're going to have more of an idea of what's going on more than ever I can. Now, sometimes the interesting thing is internally, there's much more of a knowing what's possible than I could ever know. So you might have a Jack who says, yeah, you got it. We're not touching that. You might say, well, actually, that's interesting. I think that's an area that so-and-so finds difficult. And then I can say, well, what do you think Jack will help? Because Jack has moved from being someone who says, fuck off, and you don't know what you're talking about, to actually be there helping you as an internal helper. And that happens nearly always if you can get past the idea of here's someone who's trashing you, who's saying you're useless, and who actually harms the body sometimes.
To almost, because in that instance, you've given them a voice, but you've done it in a way that is as an aid to you. So they are,
they're partners.